Whether the team is performing clean or unsightly, we'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So before we get to anything Washington football team related, we have to start with the major NFL story that could impact a game this weekend and could have far-reaching consequences, and that's the outbreak, the first COVID-19 outbreak in the league this season. The Tennessee Titans had a player test positive for COVID-19 over the weekend. They left him home. He did not travel with the team. However, after playing in the game on Sunday, they came back, and so I just figured this out. I was not privy to this information beforehand, but players aren't, and coaches and staff members aren't tested the day of the game. They're tested the day prior, and then after the game's over, they call them Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees, meaning players, coaches, and staff members are then tested on Monday, the day after the game. And when they tested on Monday, 8 confirmed tests, positive tests, were made for the Tennessee Titans, including 3 players and 5 staff members. And that's all we know right now. That number could elevate. We don't know if any Minnesota Viking players have been infected. We don't know if any of the officials officiating the game were impacted. So right now, both teams are staying away from their team facilities. They cannot enter back in until Saturday. That's when all the tests will have been administered, and they will have results back from multiple tests to make sure that everyone that is back in the facility is negative for COVID-19. So this is the first of probably many more positive tests of COVID-19. I told you, once the season started, you were going to have situations where players were going to go out, have a good time. And look, I don't know how these players came in contact with COVID-19, and I don't want to sit here and speculate, but I told you, you're dealing with a bunch of young guys. All it takes is for one guy to decide, man, we got a big win this weekend. You know, we went to Jacksonville, got a win, or we went to Minnesota, got a big win, and I got a chance to go out to the club tonight, and I'm going to go. And that's all it takes. And so, again, I'm not saying that's what happened, but there will be more of these instances before the season is done. And right now, that game is in jeopardy. The Titans are 3-0, and they are supposed to be hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers in a massive matchup in week number 4 of 2 3-0 teams. And that game right now is in jeopardy. We don't know if they're going to play. The Vikings are supposed to be playing the Texans this week. That game is in jeopardy as well because the Vikings came in contact with the Titans this Sunday. So, again, you know, the tentacles of COVID-19, they are far-reaching, and once one player is infected or one coach is infected, then they got those contact tracers to figure out who these players came in contact with or who these staff members came in contact with. And again, we're going to find out a lot more about this throughout the rest of the week, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. We'll talk about this more on the podcast tomorrow. Let's focus and turn our attention back to the Washington football team, though. And I had a chance to watch the offensive film. I'm now combing through the defensive film. And I can tell you this much. Upon further review of the 34-20 loss, I'm really encouraged by this football team, first and foremost. I told you last week that after watching the film of the game against Arizona and having watched the film in week 1 versus Philadelphia, I was impressed with offensive coordinator Scott Turner. I'm more impressed with him now than I was before. And I told you I thought he was going to make a great offensive coordinator after watching the week 2 film. He was extraordinary in this game. I thought he did a good job of getting Dwayne off to a quick start. I thought they did some really good things in the run game. I thought there were some great concepts in this game, some really good opportunities for guys to make plays. And so my initial takeaway upon further review from an offensive standpoint is we got some stuff here, man. The offensive line played their best game of the season to me in this football game. I don't think it was even close. They were much better than they were in week 1. I thought that they were light years better than they were in week 2. And I think that this was a right step in the direction that we're heading offensive line wise. Wes Schweitzer actually had a really solid game. I was impressed with what he was able to put forth in this football game. And I thought as a whole, outside of Jaron Christian, and again, he was going up against Myles Garrett, so you knew he was going to lose a couple of those battles. I thought everybody pretty much held their ground and did a really good job against the Browns front. Everybody's got to be better. You know, nobody was perfect out there, but from looking at the film, I'm encouraged, but Dwayne's got to be better. End of discussion. Some other guys have to be better, and I point those guys out in the film. And if you're not a patron, what are you waiting on? Become a patron and get on Patreon so you can see this film, because there were some really interesting tidbits from this game, some plays that were left out on the field that weren't the fault of Dwayne Haskins, some opportunities that were missed, guys, you know, not necessarily taking care of some of the things that they needed to take care of, but there are a lot of misses by Dwayne in this game. And again, I don't know what his progressions are supposed to be. I just know if I'm thinking logically, some of the things that he did in this game just didn't make a ton of sense. But again, with more experience comes a greater clarity for Dwayne, and I think you'll see that over time. He's a young guy, and I actually thought, going back and watching upon further review, yeah, there were a lot of misses. There were a lot of things that I wish Dwayne could have back, but there are also some really good things. And Ron always says that, and sometimes that falls on deaf ears, because the 3 interceptions are glaring, because the miss to Terry McLaurin in the end zone is glaring, or the rocket shot out into the flats to Antonio Gibson is too glaring to allow you to hear and see that Dwayne actually had a solid game, sans for some of the big mistakes. But when you go back and you actually analyze the film, you see that he did some good things in this game, but he's got to be better. There's no wiggle room there. He's got to be better if we're going to have a chance. But you know who else needs to be better? And I'm just starting to dig into their film. The defense needs to be better. And what happened, I don't know if we've seen a sharper contrast between the third quarter and the fourth quarter in terms of this defense. This defense was lights out in the third quarter, gave this team a chance to get back in the game, got 3 stops in the third quarter, allowed this offense to score 2 touchdowns with some great field position. And then at the end of the third quarter, when we took the lead, I don't know what the hell happened to this defense, if it was the invasion of the body snatchers or what. But this defense wasn't tired. They hadn't been on the field really for much of the third quarter. They should have been juiced, fueled up, and ready to go to try to bring this thing home. And they absolutely collapsed on us in the second half. And I'm going to have that film ready for you tomorrow. I'm done with the offensive film. All of that will be out here shortly. I've already put out the first half film. I'm putting the finishing touches on the second half film. But I tell you what, I'm encouraged by what I saw in this game, despite some of the injuries and some of the things that went down in this game. This is a really solid performance. This team is heading in the right direction. I feel very confident of that. But as I mentioned, and as all of you already know, and the film bears that out, I think the film even takes that to a new level. Dwayne's got to be better. You know, and like Ron said, at some point, you can't lean on the he's a rookie type of discussion, and he's got to show growth. I thought this game was a bit of a step back for Dwayne. All right. He's got to be better. Some of the guys around him have to be better. But at the end of the day, it starts and ends with Dwayne Haskins on the offensive side of the football. He has to be better, and he wasn't good enough on Sunday. And that was a major reason for the loss versus the Cleveland Browns. So let's get to in other news. And a big roster move was made. We knew it was coming. It's not one that I want to talk about really, because this really hurts our defense. You know, we're still waiting on news of Chase Young's groin and how serious of an injury that is and the extent of how long he'll be out for. But Matt Ioannidis was placed on IR today. We knew it was coming. I told you guys yesterday that that torn pec was probably going to result in an IR trip that was going to last the entire season. He's officially been placed on IR. His season, more likely than not, is done. And they have signed to the active roster defensive end Nate Orchard. And so we'll see what they decide to do, because remember, Ryan Anderson also got hurt in the game as well. So tomorrow's injury report will be really interesting to see who practices, who doesn't. how Steven Sims' toe is doing, how he's responding to treatment, and how his toe responded to going out and playing on Sunday. They tried to limit him as much as possible. Hopefully he'll be ready to go. And any other nicks and bruises that we may have incurred in the game that we didn't necessarily see, but you end up hearing about. Like, we didn't know Morgan Moses had an injury after week 2 until we got to the injury report on Wednesday and saw that he had a hip. So we'll see what the injury report looks like, who's good, who's not, and we'll go from there. But the big news of the day, roster-wise, is that Matt Ioannidis officially placed on IR, season more likely than not done, and Nate Orchard was then signed to the active roster, and he'll get an opportunity to compete on this roster moving forward. Whether he's active or not on game days remains to be seen, but we went really light on defensive ends on Sunday, and it almost cost us because you had not one but 2 defensive ends go down in Ryan Anderson and, of course, Chase Young. So we were a little light along the defensive line, and that's why you sign a guy like Nate Orchard. And I think James Smith-Williams was inactive. He may be active the next upcoming game, and I think he may be a guy that may be active moving forward because they like his versatility to also be able to play inside. That's why he made the roster, not only as a special teams guy, but his flexibility to be able to play defensive end and on the interior of the defensive line is something that intrigued them. With all the injuries now, they need a guy with a little bit of positional flex, as Ron Rivera likes to call it. And so James Smith-Williams is a guy that's probably going to be intriguing to this staff as to whether is a guy that they elevate to the active roster on game days because of all of the injuries and his ability to play multiple spots. So it'll be interesting to see how they move parts around on this roster to see if they sign anybody because of these injuries. Do they go outside of the practice squad and some of the guys that they've had around, like a Ryan B, for instance? Don't even know if he's still in the practice squad or not, but do you go and tap into that, or do you go outside looking for some help to bring in as you've had a rash of injuries over the last couple of weeks start to pick away at this roster? Do you start going outside of what you already had to see if you can't keep this thing going in the right direction? So a lot to talk about. We'll put a bow on this game tomorrow with the defensive film and then start to take our attention to the Baltimore Ravens, who are going to be pretty pissed off when they come to FedEx Field on Sunday. And so we'll start to turn our attention to what the Baltimore Ravens bring to the table tomorrow, as well as put a bow on this loss to Cleveland by looking at the defensive film and talking about the defensive side of the football. Again, I can tell you that the offense was pretty impressive. You had a lot of guys really step up. You know, Isaiah Wright was very impressive. I thought the offensive line, once again, was their best performance of the season to this point. I thought that a lot of guys did some good things. There were a lot of yards left out on the field, though, man. A lot of opportunities that were missed. J.D. McKissick had a big miss in this game, I thought. That pass interference, OPI that they called on Terry, that one really hurts. All of those things are in the film breakdown. So if you haven't already done so, check it out and make sure you become a patron so you don't miss out on the film breakdown this season. So with that being said, it's Tuesday. Tuesday's episodes are usually rather short because there's no practice. There are no interviews. There's not much to talk about. So we'll come back tomorrow. We'll have a live show tomorrow night, 8:30 p. And we'll break down the injury report. It'll be our first of the week. We'll see if they decide to sign anybody. I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen with the whole COVID situation now. The league is probably going to tighten their restraints on having guys from the outside come in after the outbreak in Tennessee with the COVID-19 situation. So I already heard that the Texans were looking to bring in Earl Thomas for a workout. And the league pretty much put a kibosh on that and said, no, we're not having anybody from the outside coming in right now with the COVID situation. So I don't think the Washington football team is going to be signing anybody from the outside coming in right now with the way that this situation has developed. It's a delicate situation. They do not want this COVID-19 situation to run rampant across the league. And so if they can protect these teams individually by keeping guys on the outside out, because they can't be sure of what they've been doing, then they're going to do that. So we'll see what happens with this roster. We'll see what happens on an injury front. I think we'll hear more about Chase Young tomorrow. I'm pretty much certain that we'll hear more about Chase Young because Rivera will step to the mic after practice tomorrow. So we'll get a sense of where Chase Young is. I don't anticipate him playing this week. As I mentioned, I don't think we're going to see him again until week 6 versus the Giants. That may be the first time Chase Young will even be a guy that is even mentioned as far as being able to play. So it wouldn't shock me if they decided to put him on IR for the next 3 weeks, just depending on the severity of this groin injury. But if you put him on IR, then he can't play in week 6. So they may do him like Cole Holcomb and just allow him to be a part of the active roster, not put him on IR and just kind of check his status as the weeks progress. But Cole Holcomb, speaking of which, is another guy that I can tell you we need him back sooner rather than later, because I don't know if you got to see Thomas Davis on one of those Nick Chubb runs. He can't run anymore. He doesn't have it. His fastball is gone, but he's 37 years old, so what did you expect? But his fastball is absolutely gone. At one point, that fastball was humming at about 98, 99. That fastball is now down around 90, 91 miles an hour. At some points, you can catch it at 88. So it's looking more like a changeup these days. So we could definitely use Cole Holcomb back in the lineup. But we'll get into that a little bit more in greater detail tomorrow when I have fully combed over the defensive film. And so with that being said, you guys make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Go ahead, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also, if you're not on Patreon, get on Patreon so you don't miss out on this film breakdown. And also check out the merch on LouieTeeNetwork.net. The link is down in the description below. More merch is coming here in the near future. If you haven't already grabbed your Louie T Network hoodie or your Louie T Network shirt or your mask, what are you waiting on? Support the kid, support the movement, and get you some Louie T Network merch. And if you've already got some, I'd love to see pictures of it, man. We're trying to promote this stuff. So if you're pleased with the product and you got a picture of you in your merch, send it my way. I'd love to see it, man. Really support. And I thank you guys for all the support that you've given me to this point. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow night live on the Washington Football Nightly program. But until then, I'm your man, Louie T. This has been Washington Football Nightly. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone.